You're tuned in to Horror Slop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is Horror Slop. Every night starts somewhere, and this is where yours begins. First story, first chill. Let's see if you make it to the end.
My Mother Wants Me to Dream the Same Dream Every Night, by Marat XVLS. She wanted me to create a dream, and keep dreaming it. I sit at the table. My mother stands at the stove, her back to me. I memorized it like scripture and told my mom every detail. She began recreating the scene in real life. Woke up at 6 a.m. Put out 3 coffee cups. 1 dirty plate. Burnt the toast. Bought a ceramic bowl. She even asked me to fill the kettle and recited the dialogue. She only said the lines once. But the rest, every morning, became ritual. She did this every night since I was born. Until she was diagnosed with lung cancer. And it worked, until the night she died. Then the dream began to change. I redid the ritual, every step. But the dream stayed wrong. A year passed. And it changed again. I sat at the table. The wood was wet. My mother's shape moved in an endless loop, from the stove to sink and back. You overfilled the kettle again. It boils the same either way. 2 cups this time. 1 was cracked. Leaking something thick and black. Not everything works the same just because you want it to. And I dreamed. A kettle screamed behind me. I couldn't move. My mother entered. Her head twitched, but her face stayed still. She leaned in. Whispered. You overfilled the kettle again. You ruined it. You ruined it. You were not supposed to forget. Then she peeled her face off. Nothing underneath. Just glass. And behind the glass, my reflection. I woke up screaming. That was the last time I tried fixing it. And it got worse. They all turned toward me, perfectly in sync. The cups shatter in their hands. The table splits. A face pushes up from the grain of the wood. It's mine. Eyes red, skin dried. And the voice now isn't hers. It's mine. You forgot her. You never remembered her. I haven't slept for 3 days. That kitchen. That table. That version of her. Watching something I love fall apart. Again. And again. Because I couldn't remember it right.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
11 Rules for Dipshits Who Bought a Haunted House, by Zacharias Frost. You know the type, the spooky-dooky anomalies of the supernatural persuasion. Bumps in the night, doors opening and closing by themselves, auditory hallucinations of voices and whispers. It's more common than you may think, but not everyone realizes the danger. These signs could be proof that some forsaken lost souls inhabit your property. Maybe the previous grandmother self-immolated in the attic. Maybe dear old dad went suddenly insane and repainted the house with the blood of his children, or mom tried seducing demons in the basement. If this sounds even vaguely familiar to you, and you are looking to the good old internet for help, then you've come to the right place. You see, I have this friend, had this friend named Nathan. A couple months back, Nathan found a house for sale in southern Georgia. It was nestled along a remote stretch of woods just outside of Waycross. It was a historical area, an old colonial-style home just under 5,000 square feet, 6-bed/6-bath with white picket fences and a dozen acres. The quintessential American dream house by all accounts. The price was unbelievably low, but after Nathan contacted the real estate agent, he found that the price that he had seen listed was indeed the price that was being asked. For most people, I imagine this would have raised some pretty big red flags, but Nathan was an idiot. The confident type of idiot that believed machismo is substantial for conquering all of life's obstacles. I know it's not kind to speak ill of the dead like that, spoiler alert, but I'm just trying to give an accurate portrayal of the kind of person Nathan was. You know, the alpha male who hits on your girlfriend, lives at the gym and probably spanks his meat to his own selfies. For people like Nathan, friend is really just another word for ego reinforcer. Rule number 1, when looking to purchase or rent a house, always ask for the history. Odds are if a house is being offered at way below market value, then there is a very good reason for it being that way. Nathan didn't do this, and thought that the undermarket price was simply the universe handing him something he didn't really earn, as it often seemed to do. Nathan jumped at the offer, and within a few weeks he and his family were approved to begin moving in. I volunteered to help them move in, and I'll be honest, the house was absolutely gorgeous. Things were great for them at first, but Nathan soon started noticing some odd occurrences. It started with this knocking sound, that seemed to reverberate all over the home at odd hours. He said he could never seem to pinpoint where it was coming from, and it never seemed to originate from the same place twice. Eventually he just chalked it up to the house settling, but that was just the beginning. Nathan tried ignoring these sounds, told his wife that it was just normal or the wind, and comforted his children when they felt scared. He had 2 dogs, Rusty and Sailor. Both of them black labs, and both seemed to become very anxious after moving in. Nathan did his best to get medication to help the dogs relax, but it didn't seem to help much. Meanwhile, Sailor, the younger dog, slept at the side of Mason's bed each and every night. The poor boy soon developed crippling nightmares that would torment him relentlessly, and Sailor seemed to sense it. Each time Mason would wake up screaming, Sailor would be there to try and comfort him. Poor Mason had absolutely horrific dreams, and night after night he would be tormented by them. He often spoke of the blurry man that came to him while he slept and whispered terrible things. He even said that sometimes he would see the blurry man while he was awake, but never more than a quick glimpse, and always in the shadows or outside in the woods. Rule number 6, if you or any member of your family develop inexplicable bruises, cuts or lesions, then do not take them lightly. This should be a massive red flag, and is a very bad sign. If you feel as though you are being attacked as you sleep, and wake up with unexplained scratches or wounds, then just get the hell out of the house, honestly. Natalie and Mason suffered multiple scratch marks, wounds, and even a few bruises that almost looked like bite marks. Nathan's wife Janelle was also subjected to these attacks. The children's teachers at school began to notice, and became quite worried for their safety. The modern world rarely takes these claims seriously. We put ghosts in movies and video games, but when someone actually claims to see one, we aren't so quick to believe them. Technology and science have led us to believe we are safe. That is our folly, but it's also a topic for a different day. This is yet another rule that Nathan did not abide. The worse that things got for him and his family, the more secluded he became. On numerous occasions he phoned the police saying that he believed someone had broken in, but they never found evidence of it. Eventually they even put him on a blacklist, and warned that any further contact would result in legal trouble. Rule 8 and 9 sort of belong in the same category, although one is a little more extreme than the other. Rule number 8, if you suspect something is up, it doesn't hurt to perform a cleansing. Like I said earlier, the modern world has little time to entertain the notion of ghosts and the supernatural, but that shouldn't ward you off. If you're unsure about whether your home is being haunted or not, then a routine cleansing can do wonders for you. I'm willing to bet there are mediums and priests in your town that can get the job done. Even if you can't find anyone local, you can always just go online and find instructions for yourself. It's not as effective that way, but it's better than nothing. Rule number 10, the big one. Whatever you do, don't try to antagonize the spirit. This should really go without saying, but angrily challenging the spirit or daring it to manifest is a really bad idea. But as you may have guessed, Nathan and his unlimited stream of testosterone decided to do just that. He got really drunk one night, and began ruminating on all that had been happening. Nathan was always a skeptic, but even he couldn't ignore the psychological impact on his family whether it was imagined or not. He realized his relationship with his children and wife were being heavily strained, and his new house had become a place of hostility. This made Nathan very angry. At around 2:13 a.m., Nathan is seen beginning to stir in his sleep in the security video. He grunts and speaks briefly, but the words were unintelligible. Suddenly his eyes sprung wide open in the bed, and began glancing around the room. Nathan appeared to be struggling, but his body didn't move. It is believed he was suffering an episode of sleep paralysis which left him temporarily paralyzed. His eyes continued to dart rapidly around the room. Then something happened that no one who saw the video could explain. The bedroom door slowly rolled open, but the darkness of the hallway was all-consuming. Nathan's chest began frantically pumping up and down, and his eyes stretched wide open. Something was then seen moving in the hall. It could have been chalked up to a trick of the light at first, but then a hand was seen reaching through. It was gnarled and spindly, like the wretched malformed appendage from some abyssal denizen. The figure slowly sauntered through the doorway, its tall, dark silhouette nearly grazing the top of the door frame. It had no definite features, appearing only as a hooded, humanoid individual. No eyes or face, just a shadow corporealized from Nathan's deepest nightmares. Nathan continued to hyperventilate and didn't appear blink once during the entire ordeal. The thing then finally moved closer. It then leaned down only a couple inches away from his face and appeared to whisper something. It was too quiet for the mic on the camera to pick up, but needless to say it did not make Nathan feel any better about the situation. Suddenly the thing lashed out with its twisted hands, constricting like pythons around Nathan's throat. In his paralyzed state, he couldn't even struggle against his shrouded attacker. Within a minute Nathan's chest stopped moving, and his eyes fell still. The entity retracted its hands and just stared at him for about a minute. Then, as if taunting those who would see the footage, it looked directly into the camera. It whispered something again, but again it was too quiet to discern what it was. Then as quickly as it had appeared, it waltzed out of the room and vanished back into the darkness. If he bothered to check himself, he may have found trace amounts of suxamethonium, a paralyzing toxin that once ingested will leave the person immobile yet conscious to all pain. It would have been difficult to find, as even coroners do not normally test for the substance unless specifically requested. No matter how you really slice it, this entire ordeal really comes back to Nathan himself. If only he had been a better person and not constantly demeaned his peers at every turn. If only he hadn't been so stubborn and proud. If only he hadn't gone behind my back and boned my ex-girlfriend, thus ruining our future and sending me into the spiraling depths of crippling depression, then maybe I would have helped him.
Alright, quick break before our next story. Let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine. Stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
I found the answers in the papers on the bottom of the box. I'll rewrite the literal contents below, but I warn you that many people might find it very disturbing. My dear family, if you ever find this, I must confess something. In 1972, I wasn't in Vietnam. I wasn't supposed to tell anyone, but if you have found this, it probably doesn't matter anymore. Back in 1965, me and a handful of other pilots were selected for a non-public team of astronauts, who would participate in covert missions in space for our government. We wouldn't get the glory and fame of regular astronauts, but our country needed us, and so we were there. After we announced, Sharon has touched down, our response wasn't cheers and applause, but just mere, "This is Trinity, congratulations Sharon." I'll relay the news on the other side. Be safe out there, pals. We landed on a flat plane inside a huge crater. Contrary to what some people believe, the sun shines at the dark side of the moon the same way as the light side. The amount of light depends on the lunar phase. It was still shining daylight in the place where we landed, but we knew that it would go dark in a few days. I felt excited and curious about what awaits us in this alien world. We waited for about an hour and a half to get the command's reply from Ackerman and spent the time by preparing our suits. Hell, I'm not sure about this. We're clearly missing something here. But I'll do as you say, Cap, responded Carver. Yes. If whatever was on that probe was so important for two countries to send people here to retrieve it, we have to find out what happened to it, I replied. I know, but we have to find out what's going on here. Tell me, Carver, was it just me or did we not pass the wreckage on our way back? I asked. We carried him to our lander. The patch on his suit revealed his identity as Tarkov. He was in shock and hypoxic. I don't know how long or why he was just lying there, but he was lucky to be alive. For the next couple of hours, he fell in and out of consciousness. He eventually woke up. Our Russian was bad, but luckily, he spoke English enough for us to understand each other. He didn't remember why he was there, what had happened to him and his crew, or what his mission was. When I looked out of the window, I realized that our flag was gone. There were no footprints, it looked like as if it simply vanished. At this point each one of us was really concerned, and we asked to terminate the mission. The command refused, explaining that the recovery of the satellite's data was of paramount importance. We decided to continue our search tomorrow and went to sleep. Me and Carver later took off and headed towards this mysterious target while Tarkov stayed in the Sharon. In reality, our rover had enough power to carry all three of us, but I insisted that it didn't, and that he should stay behind. And I'm afraid he knows that too, replied Carver. He was silent at first, and then replied. Listen, Tarkov, there is something you... I stopped when I noticed that he was holding something behind his back, but it was too late. Miller, you have to go and get it. Fuck. It's not that far from here, is it? Said Carver. Don't die on me, Carver. That's an order. I said before leaving. Yeah, I've got the kit, I replied. He couldn't know that I know. I treated its wound and the bleeding finally stopped. I strapped him in, strapped it in, and then strapped myself in. I didn't tell him, that I had found the black box. I didn't tell it that I found him. With the engine roaring below us, the Sharon split in half, and the crew compartment pushed us up, into the void while the legs stayed planted on the lunar dust eternally. What the hell are you doing, Miller? What is wrong with you? Shouted Ackerman and slammed me to the wall of the command module. There it was. A thing with Carver's face and body, but not Carver. Staring at us. But his eyes were completely smooth and black as night itself. He opened his mouth in a way that was simply not possible for a human, and let out a loud, disturbing screech that I wish I could forget so much. In a heartbeat, it turned to dead silence, as the Sharon detached from the CSM, and drifted into the void. No, I never spoke or heard from him since the mission. Did something happen? I replied.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse, in the best way.
True, my husband Dylan and I had been arguing a couple of hours before Thomas went missing. And it shames me to say I knew he could hear us shouting from outside. The banging of the football against the house's walls got louder and angrier as our argument escalated. When the police officer we reported Thomas as missing to heard we'd been arguing a lot recently, I saw his eyes glaze over. A runaway, he was thinking. Just another runaway. I always left the front light on for Thomas, even years later. I never gave up searching, and all my energies went into it. My life was searching for Thomas. Work, friends, and hobbies fell by the By the end of the first year, I started to notice his heart wasn't really in the search anymore. By the time the second anniversary rolled around, he started telling me to get over it, move on, and stop acting crazy. I threw him out. He didn't argue. I'd never felt so alone. I'd taken to sleeping with old Ted, the toy Thomas had loved as a young child. He'd carried it everywhere for years and loved most of its fur off, before sheepishly giving it to me at the age of 10. Thought you might want to keep it, he'd said, avoiding my eyes. I tried not to laugh and put old Ted at the bottom of a drawer for safekeeping. Who knew that token of his childhood would be so important in keeping me company on hundreds of lonely nights when I cried myself to sleep, missing my boy so much it physically hurt. Last night was windy and at first I thought I was imagining the knocking. It got louder and more. The door swung open, and there he was. My darling, wonderful Thomas. All grown up. It took a while for my eyes to relay the information to my disbelieving brain. "Hi, Mum," he said. His voice was deep and manly now, but as cheeky as ever. Cried into his shoulder. He half-hugged, half-carried me to the nearest chair and sat me down. I looked into his face, surveying the miracle. His features had filled out and he even stubble now, but there was no doubt about it, there was my boy. He grinned again, and nodded towards my hands. I only realized then that I was still clinging to old Ted. Some scumbag abducted you. Thomas shook his head. He's not here. Mum, can you get him here? I really want to see him. As we waited, I spoke to Thomas, a decade and a half of things I wanted to say to him spilling out. Whenever I tried to move the subject on to where he'd been, what had stopped him coming back or what made him leave, he clammed up and said all would be clear later. I was terrified of scaring him away again, so I backed off. We mostly talked about what his cousins and school friends had been up to. He found it funny I'd left the light on every night, but from the distinctive way he looked away when I mentioned it, I knew he was touched. Dylan turned up after a few minutes, moaning about how I'd called him at this ridiculous hour, and how I was hysterical. I said nothing, I couldn't formulate the words. I simply grabbed him by the arm and dragged him into the lounge. Electric shock. Thomas didn't rush to him. It was the strangest reunion I'd ever seen. It's him, Dylan. I cried, feeling the tears of joy sting my eyes again. It's our Thomas. Thomas stood his ground. He was a good 6 inches taller than his father now, and much more sturdily built. "Oh yeah? What makes you so certain, Dad?" They looked into each other's faces, sizing each other up. I was lost. All I knew was the creeping sense of dread growing in my gut. Dylan breathed in through his nose and closed his eyes. He paused for what seemed like an age. "I'm so sorry, Martha." This was the first time I'd ever heard Dylan apologize in over 2 decades of knowing him. I almost wanted to put my hand over his mouth, stopping him saying what I knew he would say next. I didn't think I could bear to hear it. A deathly silence fell over the room. I felt my heartbeat pulsing in my ears. Every night I'd spent crying, sobbing away in my then-husband's arms, it all raced past my eyes in that moment. I thought I might vomit. With all my strength, into the back of Dylan's lowered head. I don't remember the immediate aftermath. I just remember dropping the blood-spattered light to the floor and looking at Dylan's oozing corpse, half his head missing. My whole body was shaking. I put my hands over my face and sobbed. Thomas, or whoever the hell this twin of his was, held me. "Who are you?" I gasped through desperate cries. Thomas looked at me sadly. "I want you to drive me somewhere," he said quietly. I nodded. As I drove home alone, my grief was replaced by something better, a plan. I'm going to sell my. Once that's done, I'll join my boy. There's nothing left for me in this life and I only want to be with Thomas. I hope I've done him proud. As I sit here, cuddling old Teddy and thinking joyously about how we'll be reunited properly at the end of this month, I couldn't be happier.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah, that's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
My Girlfriend starred in a movie that doesn't exist, by Spook Brain. Jumping from the bed, I walked towards our living room scratching myself. Grabbing for the remote I turned on the television, flipping to the local news. Local actress Mariah Sanders has snagged the role of a lifetime, having been cast as the leading lady in Martin Scorsese's newly announced film. A grinning headshot of my girlfriend peered back at me from the TV. I stood there speechless, wondering what the hell was going on. My girlfriend was many things, but an actress was not one of them. We'd been dating on and off for almost 4 years, and I knew her anxiety would never allow her to perform in front of the camera. She was a delicate flower, and I did my best to protect her. "Jason, you need to see this." Her voice quivered, barely loud enough for me to hear. Huddling around her phone screen, I watched as the news ticker flashed with a breaking headline. Begrudgingly, Mariah told the police what I asked her. As I expected, they couldn't risk storming the room, so they'd stall until a negotiator arrived. With that, I slipped through the window and disappeared into the night. Starting over was the hardest thing I ever had to do, but 5 years later, I've managed to eke out an existence. That was until an interview she gave 3 days ago. Dressed in a graceful white dress, she sat on a couch and spewed lies to a late-night host. The words grated against my heart, leaving a permanent scar. Deep sadness was replaced by an immense rage. She'd never spoken about that night before, and I believed that was to protect me. But she was so clearly deluded by her newfound fame, she'd do anything to curry favor with the masses. As I sit here, in a barely running 94-foot Chevy, I watch her living her new life. New man, new dog, new house. Well, history has a habit of repeating itself, no matter how hard you try and erase it.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
I had a disturbing conversation with my neighbor's 10-year-old son, by Sam Haysom. I didn't hear Michael at first. Paul. I jumped slightly. You know when you're so caught up in your own head you forget your surroundings. My wife is back from holiday tomorrow. She's been off in Spain with a couple of her friends for the past week, and I've been thinking about my plan to meet her at the airport. Timings, when I'd need to leave, all that. I was in my own little bubble. The voice floating over from my neighbor's garden punctured through it. I turned from the mower and stared over the low wall into the garden next to mine. I couldn't see anything at first. The sky was mostly dark overhead, and the only light spilling into the gardens came from single street lamp on the road behind my house. It did little to shift the shadows. Yeah, I'm Michael. And you're Paul, my mum said. That's me. How are you guys settling in? Amazingly, considering they were still in the early moving stage, I'd barely heard a peep out of Michael and his mother. I'd been expecting to hear the sound of furniture shifting and boxes being lugged around all week, but I hadn't. They'd hardly made any noise at all. I'd hardly seen them at all, for that matter. They'd arrived late one evening the previous week, and I'd caught a glimpse of them from the window of my study, but that was pretty much it. I remember Michael's mum as a tall, attractive woman who looked a little older than me, but I hardly even got a proper look at her face. And this conversation with Michael was the first interaction I'd had with either of them. So, Michael, I said, picking up the mower and carrying it back along the garden, what are you and your mum up to this evening? I'm guessing it must be close to your bedtime soon. Nah, nowhere near, he said. I chuckled. Okay, well my bedtime's pretty early, so I'm going to head in and catch a bit of TV, I reckon. I'll see you round, yeah. Do you always mow the garden so late? Oh yeah. Yeah. I go on adventures all the time. I could hear the excitement in Michael's voice, even though I couldn't see his face properly. He was just a shadowy outline in the darkness of his garden. One time we even went night fishing. Have you ever been? It's way more fun at night, I reckon. Everything's more sneaky at night. I found myself grinning again. Despite my urge to go back inside, the kid was sort of entertaining. Well, maybe you and your mum can show me and my wife sometime. Sounds like you guys are way more exciting than we are. Paul. Yes, buddy. Do you not have anything to drink at your place, mate? My hand was still on the door, but I hadn't turned the handle yet. I stayed in the same position, my mind whirring with excuses. And when I heard a voice directly behind me, I almost jumped out of my skin. I spun round and found Michael standing about a foot away from me, staring up at me with those large, brown eyes of his. The kid must have clambered over the garden wall while my back was turned. Must have done it without making a sound. I made a quick mental calculation in my head. Our back door opened straight into the kitchen, and I had orange juice in the fridge. Michael would probably be in and out in a couple of minutes. His mum might find it a little odd that he'd been inside the house if he told her, but wouldn't she find it just as odd if her new neighbor had refused her kid a drink when he asked? Michael smiled up at me and nodded. I turned the handle and stepped inside. / I started pouring juice into the glass. Man, not me. Or at least I wasn't when I was your age. I used to be scared of the dark. You'll get used to it. Right. Doing what? I stared down at the kid. He looked back up at me, the smile no longer on his face. Somewhere down in my stomach, I felt something uncomfortable squirm. What do you mean, mate? What happened last time? Nothing, really. It's just that in the place we used to live, I made friends with this old man who lived a couple roads over from us. He invited me in for a drink, too. Only then he got weird. Oh Jesus. I tried to keep my expression the same, but I was suddenly wishing I'd said no to the kid's drink request after all. This didn't sound good. Some old pervert in his last town had invited him in for a drink, and then he'd got weird. How was his mum going to feel about him being on his own in my house now, given that something bad had clearly happened in the last place they lived? Yeah, he wanted me to come down to the basement with him. Told me he had this really cool Lego collection, and I asked if I wanted to see it. He insisted I see it, even when I said I had to go. My mouth suddenly felt dry. So, did you go with him? Mom was really angry when she found out about the man. She made me promise I'd never, ever go back there. No way. Michael looked away from me again. There was a slight smile on his face, like he was in on some joke I wouldn't understand. She did something way better than that. She made him disappear. I had my mouth open to ask another question when I realized what Michael had just said. The next thought I had was that I must have misheard him. What did you say? He turned away and pulled the back door open. I found my eyes wandering over to the glass of orange juice, my mind vaguely aware that he hadn't touched a drop of it. But when Michael spoke one more time, I turned back to him. He was framed in the open doorway, half lost in the night. It'll take some getting used to, he said, but you won't be scared of the dark much longer. Before I had a chance to reply, he'd melted into the shadows.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
The case was a murder/kidnapping, at least that's what it looked like, and it was me and Olsen. I've told you about him. There was a family, the Nebels. There was Benjamin, the husband, Jennifer, the wife, and Katie, their 6-year-old daughter. One of their neighbors had gone out for the paper around 6 a.m. and saw the Nebels' front door wide open. When she went over to see if everything was okay, she saw the wife's body. I mentioned the wife's body. She didn't have a hair out of place. She was on her back in the kitchen, about a third of her upper body was under the table. We found out after the autopsy that, well, she just died. There was no cause that they could find. She'd been a perfectly healthy woman, didn't smoke, didn't drink, ate right, exercised. It was like she'd just blinked her eyes and gone from alive to dead. Anyways, we searched the house. We went through it with a fine-tooth comb, basement to attic, found nothing. No evidence of a struggle, no weapon, nothing. So we left. We'd spent hours in that house, thought maybe we should come back in a day or two with some fresh eyes. We went over to where Benjamin worked. He was a supervisor at a lumber yard. According to his co-workers, he'd shown up at work that morning just before 5 a.m. When he got in, he worked on this narrow crate thing he was building in his office, something he told his co-workers was a project for his house. According to the other morning supervisor, he'd only built about half of the thing. Around 6:15, he said he was running to the bathroom, and that was the last anyone saw him. They never saw him leave. Pretty quickly, we found that the smell was strongest leading up to the attic. Now, I told you before, we checked the attic. I checked it myself probably 5 times. But we went back up, me and Olsen. I was up the little pull-down ladder first, and when I poked my head up I saw something. I saw a piece of wood, like a box, you know, a crate. Out falls the husband. Think about that. This guy was maybe 5 feet 10 inches, 140 pounds, and he was put in a 3 foot by 2 foot by 6 inch crate. His bones were just a mess. His insides, all his organs, they were flattened. They were just, wet, squishy pieces of fabric, almost. He was stuffed in there like, I don't know what like. He was just a rectangle of blood, skin, and parts. His skin had the discoloration of a body that had been dead for about 2 weeks, which obviously didn't make sense since they'd seen him at work that morning. He was also missing his eyeballs. A little girl's voice, calling out for help. What followed was a sequence of all the people in the attic, and the rest of the house, and the people out on the lawn, and the few people that were standing on the other side of the yellow tape, all saying some variation of the phrase, "It sounds like it's coming from over there." Problem was, every single person swore they heard it coming from a different direction. About 2 weeks after that day, the wife's sister had a funeral for Jennifer. It went fine, they buried her, all that. The husband's remains were cremated not long after that and put on display in a different part of the cemetery. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but at some point over the few weeks after he was cremated, someone stole his urn. And then, I remember it was May 12, 2007, I was going to pick up a pizza for us. I saw that girl. I saw Katie Nebel. I don't mean I saw her grown up, I don't mean I saw a little girl that looked like her when she was young. I mean I saw that fucking kid. She was standing outside the Walgreens right by our old house, crying. Killed himself the next day. My grandpa took a deep breath after that. There's never a good ending to these stories, I know. If there was, they wouldn't be the impossible ones, I'd have figured them out one way or the other. And I know I've told you some others, but that girl's voice still wakes me up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I hear it from downstairs, sometimes from the bathroom. Sometimes I'll be laying on my side, facing away from your grandmother, and it'll sound like it's coming from her mouth. We never found a trace of that girl, nothing. I told you what they do with those cases, that goddammit. I'm sorry. That's it. That's the worst one. Some of the other ones might sound worse to you, but that's the worst for me. Okay. Case 2, Case 3, Case 4, Case 5, Case 6, Case 7. NBH.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
I've been hypnotizing neighborhood kids with psychedelics for the last 17 years. Tonight, I Went Too Far, by PB 1707. Alright, writing that down makes me sound like a pervert, but I'm not a pervert. Let's get that out there. Jimmy saw me and called out. Hey Marcus. How's it going? Jimmy, what's going on? Signs is sold out, he said, visibly disheartened. His face lit up and his friends gathered around. Well, how was it? He asked. Oh man, well, we'll have to try tomorrow, he said, turning to his friends. They nodded in affirmation. I served the 4 of them Pepsi while I got the basement ready. I set up 4 chairs in the middle of my unfinished basement, turned on the surround sound speakers, and got a bell from the storage room. I ground up tablets of MDMA and fed them into the dry powder inhaler. I brought the boys down and invited them to take a seat. The process was simple enough. I played around with drug types and dosages, along with my hypnosis techniques and music. Eventually, I had formulas for every type of occasion. Again, not a pervert. It was around the year 2015 when I made my first real breakthrough. I had a group of 6 boys, I think. After the regular setup, I decided to do something a little different. To the best of my recollection, here's how the session went. Intrigued, you follow the sound, taking you down long, winding corridors to a 2-story library. The shelves are stocked with books, but they are dusty and rotted much like everything else in the house. The faded sun makes its way through the large stained glass windows, giving off glares of all colors. In the center of the room is a beautiful woman. She is the composite of every beautiful woman you have ever seen. Each of the boys shifted, smiles creeping on their faces. I couldn't help but smile too. That beautiful woman is the one who's playing the cello. She plays with such fervent passion. The way it reverberates through the library sends a chill down your spine. As you stand there, watching her play carefully with seemingly her whole body, you notice that the second-floor mezzanine is beginning to fill up with people. People you know. Friends, family, acquaintances. They wear somber looks as they take their place standing above you. None of them seem to notice you standing there. One of the boys yelped and fell out of his chair. The others snapped out of hypnosis, ripping the blindfolds off. A couple of them had tears streaming down their faces. I turned off the music and nervously watched them compose themselves in silence. There were so many emotions in the room, I couldn't get a good read on the boys. Eventually, once things relaxed a bit, one of the boys approached me. "I'm gonna go home," he said. "Okay, do you need a ride? Are you okay?" I asked. For the first time since I had begun this endeavor, I felt good about myself. It was the first time I had dared do anything meaningful with the therapy, and it seemed to be effective. These boys' lives were changed for good because of this simple session. Fast forward a few years and I have had almost 100 different boys come to do guided psychedelic therapy sessions with me. They all understood the gravity of keeping it on the down low, a point that tended to be baked into the initial invitation. They followed me into the basement and took their seats. The 2 boys that had been there before, Adam and Bryson, explained the process to the 2 new boys, Bradford and Trey. The 2 new boys seemed nervous, as most first-timers are, but they trusted their friends enough to proceed. I started the music, dimmed the lights, and instructed them to place the blindfolds on. I took another sip of whiskey, then walked the inhaler around, giving each boy 3 puffs of my special sauce. Aside from generalities, I don't usually plan these adventures too far in advance. I suppose it was the late-night reading of Lovecraft infused with alcohol and a relentless thunderstorm that led me on tonight's particular excursion. As you walk along, smelling the sweet smell of the pines, hearing the chirping crickets, you find a fallen wooden sign half buried in the ground. You dig it out and brush it off. On it reads something quite peculiar. "This way to the end of the world," it reads. You find a tree with an old rusty nail about 6 feet up and determine that this must be what the sign was attached to. Some of the boys sit upright, smirking. After making a long 3, the man grips the basketball and turns slowly to face you. He walks to you very carefully. As he gets closer, you realize the man is huge. The boys grip their seats. When he gets to the doorway, standing right in front of you, a serious look passes on his face, and he begins to speak. I clear my throat and drop my voice. "I know that you think you're just having a fun time, going on a psychedelic adventure, but you have to understand something," he says. "This journey is important. Very important. What you are doing has the potential to unlock all the mysteries of the earth. You just have to keep going. Promise me you'll keep going." After another hour of descending the stairs, you reach a second door. This one is equally heavy and rusty as the first. As you push it open, you hear the sound of waves crashing. You lean your shoulder into the door, as you did with the first one, and shove it open. Sand spills onto your feet. You look upon a beautiful endless beach of white sand bordered by blue, crashing waves on one side and lush jungle vegetation on the other. A cool, saltwater mist touches your skin. You can still hear the waves crashing and feel the ocean mist, but the world is pitch black. No stars. No moon. You can only see the few feet of sand in front of you, as illuminated by the flaming basketball. As you focus on the sound, you hear someone walking toward you. When I count to 3 and ding the bell, the sun will reappear, and your mother will be standing there. 1, 2, 3, I dinged the bell again. The boys smiled nervously. This woman brought you into the world, she fed you, clothed you, changed your diapers. Your mother sacrificed so much for you. You feel this. In this moment, you internalize an undying gratitude for your mother. You would do absolutely anything for her, you'd take a bullet for her or jump in front of a bus. Absolutely anything. I wait for a moment, allowing my words to marinate. As you continue descending the stairs, lit by the flaming basketball, you feel brave and confident, like you can confront whatever lies in the third and final door. You can get the keys to the cage. You can save your mother and you can find the secrets to the end of the world. You just have to keep going. You have to be. Thunder cracked outside, loud enough to make me jump and snap the boys out of hypnosis. They ripped their blindfolds off and stumbled to their feet, breathing heavily. "Oh my God, that was intense," Adam said. "Well, thanks for having us over, Mr. Marcus," Bryson said, picking up his hat. "Should I wake him?" I asked the others. This was Bradford's first session and I didn't want him to freak out when he awoke. Bryson and Trey disappeared a couple minutes later after making plans with Adam to meet up at Bradford's house when. Adam then took a seat in the corner, excited to watch the session with Bradford proceed. Bradford visibly shivered. I turned the music up, allowing Bradford a few minutes to descend the stairs. "What's your end goal with this session?" Adam asked. I smiled. "We have 5 senses, right?" "Yeah. Sight, smell, touch, taste, and, what's the last one?" "Yeah. So, what if we can experience other senses, but don't know how to activate them?" I asked. "Like in the same sense that birds or whales know how and when to migrate. Or how any number of animals and insects can locate food or water in almost any scenario. They have these intuitions that we don't quite understand. I don't know if it's possible to activate them in the real world, necessarily, but I do believe that we can activate them within the hypnosis." I took another sip of my whiskey. It's still a theory, but I think we can tune our inner antenna, so to speak, to understand the secrets of the universe. Like what? As you descend the stairs, you begin to hear voices calling from above. You hear your dad, your siblings, your friends. They all voice their support. You can do it. Keep going. You're almost there. Be brave. Bradford sat up tall in his chair. Getting closer, I thought. The flaming basketball finally finds an end to the staircase. You step onto a cobblestone landing and look around you. You have descended into a large silo of some kind, maybe a cave or a well, with nothing but a door of similar size and configuration as the first 2 against the wall. On the ground, a flicker of light reveals the location of the cage keys wedged between 2 stones. However, before you pick the keys up, you realize that you must first open the door. Just then someone descends the stairs behind you, but you don't feel scared. The person steps into the light of the flaming basketball and you realize that it's you. You are standing face to face with yourself. He smiles at you and you smile back. Bradford smiled and I looked to Adam. He gave me a thumbs up. The other you puts his hand on your shoulder and looks into your eyes. He's almost like a more self-assured version of yourself. He's fearless. He's brave. He's a hero. You must understand, he says. You have been endowed for this mission. You were chosen long ago for this mission. Behind this door lies a cloud of knowledge. When you open the door and step inside, you will be immersed in this cloud. You will be met with a deep understanding of the mysteries of the universe. You will see the origins of creation. You will understand the immensity of all that exists. You will know these things and understand them in a way that will allow you to communicate your findings to others in the real world. Frankly, I was more shocked than he was. Bradford was my first completely immersed patient. He was in my complete control. This was not an empowering thought, mind you, it was a horrifying one. I briefly considered pulling the plug on the whole thing right then, guiding him away from the door and back up the staircase to the real world, but I didn't. I repeated the instructions, then took a deep breath. 1, 2, 3, I said, then dinged the bell. Bradford stood up abruptly, sending the chair and Adam sprawling onto the floor behind him. He ripped his blindfold off and looked around frantically, like a trapped animal. Bradford, it's all okay, I said, but I knew it wasn't. Adam stumbled to his feet. Bradford, it's all right, buddy. It's me, Adam, right here, he said and reached for him. Bradford looked around anxiously for another minute, his feet unmoving, then fixed his eyes on the concrete block wall on the opposite side of the room. Stay here, I said to Adam. I walked to the other side of the room, between Bradford and the wall, the bell clutched in my hand. Frankly, I didn't know what to do. I had to assume he was still under some kind of hypnosis, though I didn't know whose. Bradford, when I count to 3 and ring the bell, you will come out of hypnosis. Again, when I count to 3 and ring the bell, you will come out of HYPN. He bolted straight at me, knocking me to the side and plowing straight into the wall, head first. Bradford, listen to me, I said. Yes, call 911, I said, trying incoherently to piece together a story in my head. Once Adam got to his phone on the other side of the room, Bradford began seizing, knocking me on my ass. I backed up, recognizing my feeble body to be no match for his apparent raw animal strength. Please, Bradford, breathe with me, I said. Adam screamed. I tried to lay Bradford's lifeless body straight when his eyes shot open, a look of pure terror on his face. No, he screamed and rolled away from me. He got onto his hands and knees, breathing heavy. As I carefully eased toward him, he let out a loud grunt and began hitting his head on the concrete floor with inhuman intensity. The sound of his head repeatedly crunching against the floor like that will haunt me forever. Blood continued to pool beneath him. I backed away from him, helpless. Did you call anyone? I asked with a shaky voice. Adam? Okay, our story, I started. Then Adam's eyes grew wide. When they got to Bradford's house, they found Bradford's mom on the kitchen floor, he said and looked up at me. She's dead. No, that's impossible, the hypnosis can't control someone who isn't under hypnosis, I said, nervously. It can't be related. No way. You said that the goal is to tap into other senses, right? To activate other parts of the brain? Adam said. Well, yeah, that's a theory, but either way, how would that kill Bradford's mom? All I know is that whether I spend my days as a free man or behind bars, I don't know that I'll ever be able to sleep again wondering what Bradford saw when he opened that door and stepped into the cloud. Something he saw drove him to this madness. That much is clear. One last note to the psychiatric community or those who may be looking to build upon my research: some things are better left unknown.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
I don't celebrate birthdays anymore. When you get older, you try to forget they even exist. You really don't need a reminder telling you you're slowly becoming an outdated dinosaur, and I've always found commemorating the harrowing approach of your own death a rather morbid notion. So I suppose having my birthday in the middle of a nationwide lockdown was somewhat of a godsend. That didn't stop my mother from sending me a present though. She always found a way to annoy me, in the best way possible, and she'd outfiddle the devil himself just to put a smile on my face. I don't know how she did it, but this morning, when I went to let Dave, my cat, out, I nearly tripped over it. An anonymous brown package just laying there, inside my flat. How the hell did she pull that off? I yelled to Dave to hurry his shit up, but he wasn't having it, so I just closed the door, and brought the package with me inside, carefully placing it down on the kitchen counter. Mom was a next-level prankster, so I made sure to investigate every inch of it, weighing it, gently shaking it, before finally opening it. After worrying discordantly for what felt like minutes, I was finally greeted with a single video file named Jeffy's Home Videos 86 to 90. I caught myself smiling sheepishly in the reflection on my screen. I didn't even know we had a video camera back then, so it was a very thoughtful surprise. Sort of an atypical gift from my mom, but I was still halfway expecting it all to be some elaborate prank. Maybe it was a Rick roll or something. But no, to my mild surprise it seemed like a pretty extensive collection of genuine home videos from the 80s, complete with ridiculous low resolution, graininess, horrible audio, and an abysmal cameraman. They seemed to be in the wrong order though, starting when I was 4, then younger and younger, which, to me, proved that it was my technically challenged mom who'd compiled them. It was the summer of '86 according to the date in the bottom left corner. A shaky cam, more than likely maneuvered by my dad, looking over a tall white fence. A family of 3 was gathered on the other side, husband, wife, and a tiny toddler. I didn't recognize any of them, but I suppose they must have been our neighbors. We moved every couple of years when I was a child, something about my mom's work, so it was an educated guess. A chill ran down my spine. Those exact words have no meaning without context, you know. Could point to absolutely anything. Let's do it. Let's go get ice cream. Let's do it. Let's drive down to the beach. Innocent things. Mundane snapshots. But the way she said it, and the expression on her face, I knew instantly that something wasn't right. Moments later the shaky cam got shakier, now running around the fence, and into the backyard of the family. The cameraman, assumedly my dad, stopped at the gate, zooming in on the woman's face. She looked shocked. Scared even, holding on to the toddler tightly, and backing away towards the front door. Then my mom came into view again, and I realized why the woman appeared so frightened. I had to replay that moment several times too, because I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it was her. I slammed the laptop shut, and staggered back, hyperventilating uncontrollably. No. It couldn't be. It had to be some kind of prank, right? Right? Some unbelievably elaborate prank. You could do that these days, you know. Fabricate shit like that. Right? Deep fake and everything. I didn't send you any videos, but your father is coming over to sort it out. Mom 3. Update 1. Final.
You're still tuned to Horror Slop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
My boyfriend literally cannot stop saying, Poggers, by author Jojo. It started innocently enough. I was reading on the bed while my boyfriend, Charlie, was playing on the computer with his friends. I don't play many games, so it's interesting to listen to the things he says to his friends, even if terminology goes over my head sometimes. There will be moments when I'll be focusing on something and he'll just spout off words that sound extraterrestrial. I'll just laugh it off and continue with what I was doing. It wasn't my thing, but he enjoyed it and it wasn't hurting anyone, initially. Like I said, I had my nose between the pages reading about various armchair philosophies as Charlie raved on in the background play Call of Duty, I think. He had won a match and swiveled his chair to face me, like a dog when they did a trick right. I heard Charlie mutter. Now that was poggers. It was such a random word that it tickled my brain when I heard it and I couldn't help but laugh. Charlie leaned back in his chair as if he was exhausted himself as he swiveled to face me once more. I can't believe I just said that unironically. He echoed my laughter, offering a painfully adorable smile. I feel like I should wash my mouth out with soap. He repeated the word a few times, making sure to let out popping noise when mouthing the P. We both laughed it off and he said goodnight to his friends. It was time for me to get some quality time with him, and with that my book remained on the nightstand until morning. He shook his head. It just kind of came out, sorry. He said, raising the toothbrush and dragging it across his teeth. We both brushed our teeth and in unison spit into the sink. As I was wiping my mouth I could see Charlie leaning in for a kiss. I turned my head, but when I met him face to face a putrid smell climbed into my nostrils. It was enough to make me recoil away from him. It was like battery acid poured over rotting roast beef. It took a good bit of water for the mess he had spit into the sink to budge at all. Eventually, with the convincing of steaming hot water, it disappeared. I went to say something to him, but he was captivated by his reflection, with his mouth moving ever so slightly. His lips quietly repeating the P sound over and over. I told him that we should just go to bed and we'll make an appointment to see the dentist, make sure something weird wasn't going on with bacteria or something. We made our way to B and settled down for the night. With the lights turned off and the dark of a sleeping world creeping in, I closed my eyes. I don't know how long I was asleep for, but I was woken slowly by a small prodding on my shoulder. Charlie was ever so gently poking me, like a child who wants their parent to wake up on Christmas but is afraid to make them angry. I shuffled my body, still coming out of the throes of deep sleep. My body was sluggish and the blankets felt like they weighed 30 pounds. As I turned over I reached behind me to flick on the light, and the sudden brightness momentarily stunned my vision. I started wiping my eye and was about to ask what was wrong when a very familiar and pungent smell assaulted my senses again. It was worse this time, like it had been sitting for a while. I struggled to keep my urge to vomit subdued. This was made all the more difficult when I moved to brace my new position and felt my fingers press against the sheets. As my fingers pressed down, a hot and viscous liquid rose from the divots I had made. Dialing 911 as fast as I could, I heard Charlie behind me beginning to shout, "Poggers," over and over. I could just imagine the molten ooze spewing from his mouth like Yellowstone as he attempted to clear his mouth of the heat. I didn't know what to even say to the operator, so I told the lady he had severe burns and trouble breathing. Keeping the phone off the hook as the operator confirmed that an ambulance was on the way, I made my way back to Charlie. It was so much worse than I first saw. The blankets on the bed where he was facing away from me were soaked. The liquid had saturated the sheets and bed to the point that they were dripping onto the hardwood. The whites of his eyes were beginning to stain yellow like a smoker's walls, and his skin was so visibly dry I thought he was going to start molting. He barely recognized the man I knew as he rose from the bed, shambling to his feet. It looked like some cheesy zombie flick with a small budget, but seeing it in person, happening to someone I loved, was so painful and scary. Eventually, I made it back upstairs and started cleaning up the mess. Luckily the piles of vial no longer burned on contact, though the texture was still enough to make me wince. I didn't think there was a point washing anything, so I just pulled the bed with its covers out to the alleyways and rested them against the garage. This is not Poggers.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
Notes to the Girl Whose House I Live In, by JJX2525. There's a crack in your roof where I can see down onto the street below. Don't worry about the roof, by the way. Yes, it's pretty cramped, but I like my spaces small. I've actually stuffed a few things up there to make it smaller, just bits and bobs from the recycling. I don't think you'll miss them. I can sit with my face against the wall and see down onto the street. That's where I saw you meeting up with all those people wearing black. It would have been weird anyway because you never meet anyone, but they were all rubbing your back and holding your hand and stuff. I was scared you were going to bring them in, but you just went off together, so that was okay. I don't know what I would have done if the house had filled up with people. You know, it really explains a lot that there was someone else before me. Like the fact you have 2 sets of drawers in your bedroom, or how you're living in such a big house all by yourself, and do weird things like leave the Wi-Fi in the cutlery drawer or watch the same TV show all day on a weekend. I know what we have. It's a symbiotic relationship. That means you help me by giving me a warm place to stay and Wi-Fi, and I help you by eating all the spiders. Since I only pay rent in spiders, I try to keep the things I take to a minimum, but I can't say I feel too bad about stealing your socks. You have so many socks. Why would one girl need so many? I get a lot more out of them than you do, anyway. I like to take them apart by the threads and then wrap all the threads around my fingers and pull them tight till the tips go purple. I can nibble my own fingertips and not feel a thing. It's pretty great. You see what I mean about your habits? I'm sorry, but it's just weird. Sometimes if I'm having a bad night, I like to get under your bed while you're asleep. It's nice because I can hear you breathing, and then I can match my breath up with that. I lie there for ages, gasping in and out, and if you get up for the bathroom or anything, I have to go completely still and hold my breath. I don't know why I do it. I guess it's fun. You're the first person whose company I've ever enjoyed. You cooked dinner the other evening. I noticed because you played music, which you never do, and you made something which took almost an hour and a half with about 1 million ingredients. I crept down to the top of the staircase and I could see you bouncing around doing moves with the spoon. It was so funny I had to cover my mouth to keep from laughing. Then you sat down. You lit the candle on the table and started eating by yourself. Nobody else showed up, and after you were done you took the other food and threw it away. Even though I was relieved, I felt kind of bad that the other person never showed up. You didn't seem sad, though. It was like you'd expected it to just be you. After you went to bed, I went through the bin and ate some of the food you threw away. It was delicious. I knew something was wrong the next day because you didn't leave for work, and then you ran a bath in the middle of the afternoon. After you'd been in there for ages and ages, I started to get this horrible bad feeling. I crawled down to the landing. The bathroom door was open a crack, so I peeked through. I ran back upstairs. What I'm trying to say is that I'm sorry I lit your roof on fire.
You're still tuned to Horus Lop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
A girl, riddled with cuts and bruises, walked into our police station holding a bloody letter, by Itzmi Royale. Her right hand grasped a slip of paper which immediately slipped out when she collapsed onto the floor. My co-worker Yana and I rushed to her aid, wrapping her with our jackets and putting her in front of the heating system we had in our office. A few minutes later, we were settled down and I handed the girl a cup of warm tea. "Are you all right, kid?" I gently asked. "What happened?" She remained silent. Her eyes looked like she had been crying the entire way there, and her gaze was fixed on the steam rising from the cup. "Kay," the girl finally answered. "Thank you, Kay," Yana replied. "Now, we need you to tell us how you got hurt and what exactly happened." The girl paused. She looked at Yana, and without saying anything, handed her the piece of paper. Kay then started softly crying. Yana passed the folded paper to me and consoled the girl. I noticed that it was covered in dried blood as I opened it up. I started to read over it and realized that it was a handwritten letter. A letter addressed to Kay. "Dear Kay, I'm sorry for misspelling your name. I can only hear your voice from the basement and the dim light down here does not help. I managed to pick up your name from the conversations I have overheard. He feeds me scraps through a broken drainage pipe attached to the cemented wall, but he only sends food when he feels like it. I've degraded to only skin and bones. I don't know how long I have left to live. I have grown filthy in this unhygienic cage, but my only source of comfort is this paper and pencil. I have managed to grasp onto sanity through writing short stories and creating drawings. All of them about you. So, I planned each day. I realized that if my weak body tries to shout a warning, he might attack you before you can escape. I then thought of a different way. Find the police. Tell them about this monster. Tell them to search for this cruel place. Most importantly, do this when you are safe. Anyway, tomorrow is the big day. I better stop here. I don't want him to find out what I've been up to."
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
The thought scared me, but I obeyed orders as I had been programmed to do. My father would send me to do cash jobs, mowing lawns and doing general yard work. He would usually wait in the car until I was done or leave and come back if no one was home. "It's pretty hot outside, I thought you might want this," she said, handing me a black drink. "It's Pepsi, I hope that's okay," she smiled. I had no idea what Pepsi was. It was black like the oil mother made me drink, so I thought it should be okay. I looked back at her. She made me nervous for reasons I was yet to know about. "I have to work," I replied to her. Without another word she huffed and walked away. I spent the rest of the day counting down the minutes until my father came to pick me up. I was convinced they would know I had gone off mute, that I had spoken to someone. When my father's dusty red wagon pulled up, I loaded my gear into the car and got in. No words were spoken. I felt a small sense of relief, but a small voice in the back of my head spoke to me. "He may not know now, but wait till you get home." Nothing was out of the usual that night. I did my chores, worked on my uploads and recharged my batteries. The rare moments I was left alone, I did something I'd never done before. I watched TV. Though usually on mute and in short intervals, I started seeing images of the outside world. Happy families, cartoons and animals. It was mesmerizing and terrifying at the same time. The day that changed my life, however, was the day I turned on the TV and caught a glimpse of I, Robot. Real androids that had sown real doubts within me. Though I knew something was inherently wrong about my situation, I didn't know what to do. Eventually, I was sent back to Pepsi Girl's house and got to work. I was really hoping she would bring me some more, but didn't get my hopes up. I was almost done mowing the lawn when she pulled into the property. I watched her drive up to the house and get out. A part of me screamed to talk to her. 1. I would find out the truth about myself. 2. She may tell my father and my malfunction would need to be fixed. 3. I might get Pepsi. I had blown it. That night was the worst night of my life. The fixing my father did was worse than ever before, and now I knew. I am something, I'm someone. The seams were splitting, my father no longer bothered with the usual half-assed facade that had become so apparent to me now. It was just straight punishment. Both my parents tried scaring me, telling me stories of police and the outside world. They were both furious but also shaken. I wasn't allowed out of the basement after that. The days passed slowly and my parents' screaming matches were the only form of stimulation I had. I would put my ear to the door to try hear what they were saying. "Come," he said, motioning me out of the room. I obeyed his commands and was led into the backyard. We walked further out onto the property before he ordered me to dig a hole. "What am I digging for?" I asked him. "Yeah, that's right. Gonna shut you down and get a new one. One that can keep its fucking mouth shut." A half smile appeared on father's face, as if satisfied with himself. That smile pissed me off, that man pissed me off. As much as he scared me, I thought of what I was missing. Though, I didn't even know what I was missing apart from the magical world I had put together through the TV shows I'd seen. I thought of Pepsi Girl, I thought of the fucking Pepsi and then all the pain this man had caused me. I decided I would go to Pepsi Girl's house. I knew it was close and had an idea of where it was. I continued walking and found myself at the driveway just as the sun was coming up. I knocked on the door until a worried man came out to greet me. I told him everything I'd told his daughter and he believed me. Thank God he believed me. The police arrived at the house to find my father with a gun in his mouth. He had already disposed of my mother. They told him to put it down but he pulled the trigger and it was over. Over for them but not for me. My life was just beginning. It was revealed to me that they weren't really my parents. They had stolen me, stolen my childhood, my mind, and at times I wonder if they just might still steal my sanity. Thank God for malfunctions. Note, thank you Gary, Emily and Grace, Pepsi Girl. Thank you.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite serves. Hope you're hungry.
My friend Callie has the perfect life. I mean, look at this shit. Posted on Instagram, a week ago. John made an impromptu campfire in our backyard tonight. We ate s'mores, stargazed, and fell asleep. I am so blessed. Number happily ever after. And underneath, a beautiful photo of Callie, John, and their 2 kids lit by a campfire. The kids were smiling and well-dressed. He was handsome as always, smiling, a shadow of stubble along his jaw. She had a full face of makeup, a cute dress. The next day, there was another update. Even on my bad days, John is my sunshine. Today he made dinner, my favorite, number eggs Benedict. And he tells me I'm beautiful, even when I'm not wearing makeup. Number love me hubby. Then I frowned. You're being mean. Of course she has embarrassing imperfections. So do you, so does everyone. This woman, she was actually enjoying motherhood. Nice fort, my husband said, through a mouthful of Doritos. Do they sell those on Amazon? No. He built it. That's awesome. What? They got a nanny. Obviously. She does all the lousy work, like cleaning poop and doing laundry. Then they have time to fuck around and build forts. I stared at the photo. The 2 kids stood inside the wooden fort, which looked expertly constructed. Inside, the little girl and little boy poked their heads out, smiling. The little girl's hair was perfectly pinned back with a bow, and the boy was wearing a fancy button-down shirt. Behind them, the basement was clean. Even their toys had all been put away. John crouched next to them, handsome with his wavy dark hair and brilliant, white smile. Perfect. Magical. When I woke up, there was already a new post from her. It was a selfie of her and him, standing together on a boat. Behind them, the sun rose, painting the sky in beautiful hues of red. The open sea glistened and sparkled. I stared at the photo. Something seemed a little off about it. For one, he was holding the camera. Usually when I saw couple selfies, the woman was holding the camera, because the man never really wanted to take a selfie in the first place. I grabbed my phone and called the police. After hours of searching, they finally found them. Callie, tied up on her husband's boat. John, armed with a knife. When the police searched the house, they found the two kids locked in the fort in the basement. Help me.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
My son would not stop crying. I loved him once. I really did. I tried so hard to do right by him. I let him sleep in my bed. I rocked him back and forth, his heavy skull pressed against my neck like a noose. He puked everywhere. His insides were always on my clothes or on the floor. Nothing felt clean. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. I froze. Even though I despised his crying, I didn't want to go check on my son. And I didn't want anyone else to either. I just wanted him to rot in his room and cry until his feeble vocal cords crumbled. But it might be the cops. I couldn't hide for long. By neglecting his cries I might have made the situation worse. That fucking bastard. That useless waste of an egg and sperm. I got up slowly, smoothing my house dress as I rose. I walked to the door. With a deep breath I checked the peephole. It wasn't the cops. It was Ariana, home from school. I must have lost track of the time. Just for safety, baby, I told her sweetly. Now there's something I need to tell you. What? She looked worried. Poor girl. Ariana stopped. I don't want to go in there, she murmured. I guess okay, she replied, squeezing my hand again. We entered the musty room. Bottles of beer scattered the floor like cockroaches. On the bed lay my son, covered in his own blood. The shotgun blast to the stomach had revealed his intestines but hadn't killed him. He looked up at us with nearly dead eyes. His arms held his organs inside his body. His toes were cut off, lined up neat on the bedside table. His voice was close to death. I'm sorry, he whispered.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
I work at an amusement park. Only half of the monsters here are paid actors, by Girl from the Crypt. Now, you might be wondering why a park would keep around non-human creatures that pose a potential threat to its visitors, and of course, you'd have to ask management for an exact answer. My best guess, however, is that they are in fact good employees, they don't need to be paid, look extremely real and offer a way more authentic experience. Of course, the experience cannot be too authentic, if you catch my drift. That's what we, the actual actors, are here for. I spend my day walking around in my costume, either chasing the visitors with my whip, which for clarification is part of my role, or leading it around by its chain that is attached to the iron collar around its neck. God help us if that thing ever comes off. When they told me they had given me the acting job because of my physical strength and that they needed me to take care of a monster of sorts, I was dumbfounded. Then again, my job interview had included questions like, would you describe yourself as relatively fearless, and, if you were to get attacked by a wild animal, would you A, fend it off, B, run for your life and call for help, or C, hide? So, the warning signs were there. My manager Dale, a grumpy, douchey guy in his late 20s, had me dress up in the costume I have been wearing nearly every day for 3 years now. It's hard to describe, kind of like a goth monster hunter outfit which comes with a whip, but it looks really fancy and is agreeably comfortable. He had then led me to a large cage in the horror-themed section. It was standing next to the bigger funhouse. Its door was held shut by a chain with an oversized lock on it. The sign above it read, "Mr. Scratch," in big, twisted red letters. Dale unloaded the large plastic bag he had been carrying from his shoulder and threw it onto the ground in front of me. "You'll find a lamb shank and the metal leash in there," he said curtly, nodding at the bag. "A lamb shank?" I inquired. But the look on Dale's face was serious. He almost seemed a bit frightened. "Feed it," he hissed. "Feed it and then put on the leash." I shook my head and rolled my eyes, but decided to play along. I bent down and picked up the plastic bag, produced the large lamb shank from inside and waved it at the moving costume. "Come and get it," I sang, feeling immensely stupid for talking to a person like I would to a dog. It was warm. Dale came strolling over and gave me a pat on the shoulder, which for the record is the only friendly gesture I've ever gotten from him. He handed me the key for Mr. Scratch's cage and told me to make sure not to lose it. "Being," I offered. Dale laughed once again before adding, "Just the guy before you. He was good at his job, but we had to let him go. You can't be the monster tamer if both your legs are missing." Upon seeing my startled expression, he smirked and told me not to let it get to me. He was sure Mr. Scratch liked me better. In regards to the monster, I've already mentioned that I've taken to calling him the sock puppet. After reading my description of him, I bet you can see where I'm coming from. The sock puppet and I are on pretty good terms, by the way. He's never really caused me any problems. I usually walk him around the park and sometimes let him dash forward to jump scare a visitor, only to then pull him back and hiss at the visitor not to get too close to him. That's our favorite trick. Too bad you can't say that about some of the other actors and their pretenders. I met him on my second day on the job. Of course, Dale had failed to introduce me to any of my colleagues. He had simply given me a short overview about who I was yet to meet and what I was to expect. He hadn't put very much effort into his explanation. I was on my to Mr. Scratch's cage in the early morning about half an hour before the park's opening time that day. I was already dressed up and ready to release the sock puppet, carrying with me the metal leash and a bag of dog treats, both of which I dropped when I collided with the man in the doctor's outfit who had seemingly come out of nowhere. By his fake blood-smeared lab coat and the surgical face mask dangling around his neck, I determined him to be another actor. "Hey. I'm Darius. You must be the new tamer," he stammered, and without giving me time to answer, added, "I really need your help right now." I abandoned the leash and dog treats and the two of us got on our way. Darius told me he had already looked for her in our section, so she had to be in one of the others. Our first guess was the Hollywood one since it was pretty much right next to ours. While we did not find her there, Darius made use of our time by informing me about the workings of the park in a bit more detail. All the not actors are put into cages overnight to keep them from wandering off. Half an hour before opening time, they're being let out. He also told me a few bits about some of the other monsters, but said it would be best for me to find out myself. We didn't pass any on our way through the Hollywood section, but we did find the nurse. She was standing next to a food booth, the owner of which thankfully had not arrived yet. She had her back turned to us and was swaying slightly. Her thigh-length nurse costume was smeared with red stains, not unlike that of Darius, but something told me that no fake blood had been used on hers. I watched as he approached her, grabbed her by the shoulders and turned her around. I nearly gagged upon seeing her face. Half of the lower portion of her jaw was missing, the other half was dangling loosely off her head. Blood was steadily dripping from her tongue, reminding me of that of Mr. Scratch. She was completely unresponsive, her eyes staring past me and Darius into the distance. If she knew we were there, she wasn't letting it on. The sight of the undead nurse may have grossed me out for a little while, but I learned pretty soon that she wasn't the kind that I needed to fear. There are some much, much worse things in this park than her. Part 2, Cowboy and Fairy. Part 3, Stagecoach and Mime. Part 8, Mr. Scratch. Part 9, Firewater. Part 10, Ride on the Stagecoach. Part 12, Girls' Night In. Part 14, I Passed Out Again. Part 15, 20 Questions.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
Our son just told us he's getting married, but his bride is a little strange, by Genuinely Grim. Mom, Dad, we have something we'd like to tell you, my son said, producing a bottle of champagne from his backpack. Hold on, I'll get some glasses. Breathe, I whispered to her, and watched as her shoulders tensed up. It's going to be okay. Lindsay was our son Benjamin's latest. The two were inseparable and he insisted on bringing her along every time we invited him over for dinner. Benjamin was almost 35 years old, and while we had certainly expected to see him settle down eventually, I suppose we had hoped our only son would end up with someone more like him. Like us. I could almost feel my wife's anxiety permeating the room. From the corner of my eye, I could see blood trickling from the scab on her wrist, and snatched her hand away, gripping it firmly in mine. My son and Lindsay seemed oblivious to the interaction. My wife's nails dug into my palm. We love each other dearly and wish to spend every waking moment with one another. Droplets of sweat began forming on my upper lip. What? He snapped. What are you looking at me like that for? Benjamin, I began, playing for time. We understand that. Lindsay is important to you. But we cannot in good conscience support this arrangement. Lindsay is the perfect woman for me. Look at her, for God's sake. Show me a girl more perfect than her. She has perfect skin, perfect hair, and a body to die for. Plus, he exhaled, wiping the sweat away from his forehead, I have to marry her. We're having a baby. My wife and I stared at him, dumbfounded. My brain seemed to be at a loss for how to react. Sweat was pooling under my arms, and a slow chill was creeping up my spine. I wondered if our son had finally lost it. I wondered if this was one of those times where it was acceptable to wrestle a person to the ground and call the police. "AAB baby," my wife whispered, a hand over her mouth, "B but how?" Son, Lindsay is not a real person. She is a sex doll. She cannot get pregnant or bear children, you must understand that. Now, sit down right here, let's make a cup of tea so we can all calm down and talk about this. With that, I brushed past him and headed for the kitchen, but Benjamin's next words stopped me in my tracks. Benjamin looked like he was about to go on another one of his angry rants, but his mother's expression seemed to ground him. He slumped down on the couch and buried his face in his hands. "All right," he said, sorrowfully, "all right. When we found out that Lindsay couldn't get pregnant, we knew we had to look for other solutions. So, we adopted."
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
I have been married to Marie, my wife, for 15 years now. We have 2 kids together, Aaron, 10, and Priscilla, 8. I have always pictured us as the perfect family, you know. Nice, spacious house in a good neighborhood, barely any arguments, well-behaved, healthy kids with good grades. Everything seemed spotless. And number X200B. And number X200B. And number X200B. My wife is a stay-at-home mom. She is the love of my life. We met at a company retreat 17 years ago and we hit it off immediately. Soon we fell in love, got married, spawned the kids, you know the deal. She left the company when Aaron was born. I was making enough for the both of us, so I was happy to see her happy. And number X200B. And number X200B. I tried driving my kids to soccer practice and gymnastics twice a week, hoping to get some conversation started. They seemed really upset at the idea of me taking them anywhere, and my wife desperately tried to get me to reconsider, but I insisted. I stopped taking them after a week. The look in their eyes scared me. It was like the very presence of me made them so uncomfortable that it nearly induced panic attacks in them. I was at my wit's end at this point. When Aaron was 2, a few months before Priscilla was born, I had been spending months at the time on a job. When I got home for a much-needed long weekend, my wife and son greeted me at the airport. Only it wasn't my son. I didn't recognize him at all. I stood there frozen for minutes, before my wife, looking quite flustered, snapped me out of it. And number X200B. I picked him up and just stared at him. He didn't seem familiar at all. At this point I was starting to feel unwell, like I had to throw up or something. I couldn't understand why I didn't recognize him. When we got home, I told everything to my wife, and she said it was because I spent too much time away. Kids that age grow and change like crazy, she explained. It took me weeks to accept it, but at some point I just realized I was acting like a lunatic, and got on with my life. And number X200B. Was the last 17 years of my life a lie? It seemed so impossible, but at the same time I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The only thing I knew for certain was that I had to get to the bottom of this. Otherwise I was afraid I was going to lose my mind. And number X200B. I started paying more attention to every little detail that went on in the house. Every conversation, every phone call, every movement, any little detail that could explain what was going on. There was always something that never quite made sense. Just a tiny, little thing that would catch my eye. How they always seemed to talk in perfect order, like they were reading from a script. Like how they always seemed to know who was coming up the driveway just moments before they actually did. Like it all was some elaborate stage act. I was getting more paranoid by the minute, and I think they noticed something was wrong. And number X200B. That's when my wife sent me to therapy. She said I needed it, that I had been acting different ever since I got home. Like everything was my fault. I tried explaining to her that I was probably just a bit anxious because I wasn't used to living there, but she wouldn't hear it. My first session went as I had suspected. The therapist was desperately trying to get me to question myself and my motives. I didn't share anything with him. I simply couldn't trust him. Maybe he was in on it. Maybe they were trying to label me insane. Lock me up in some godforsaken asylum. To what end? In any case, I couldn't afford to spill my suspicions just yet. I needed some proof. And number X200B. And number X200B. And number X200B. And number X200B. One morning my wife was getting the kids ready for school. Everything normal. Eating breakfast, packing their lunches, ushering them into the car. The old, we're gonna be late for school. And number X200B. And number X200B. And number X200B. My wife did not know this, but I had looked through all the papers I could get my hands on, one of them being the school calendar. And that day they were definitely closed. Not only did my wife not realize that the school was closed, she also forgot her purse. And in it I found the one thing I had been looking for the past few days, a paycheck. And number X200B. Now the paycheck wasn't made out in her name, or the name I knew her by at least. It was made out to one Lisa Guerin. But it wasn't that little detail that threw me off. It was something else. Something extremely disturbing. Something impossible. It was the name listed as the employer. And number X200B. It was me. Part 3. Final part.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is Horror Slop.
Has anyone heard of the left/right game? Part 8, by Neon Tempo. Part 1. Part 4. Part 7. Part 10. As I fall backward towards the slope, my gaze rising to meet the night sky, I feel a sudden weightlessness take hold, as if I'm being granted an audience with the heavens. The rich and endless firmament shines down through the canopy, with no earthly light to dull its glow. Despite everything that's happened, I'm unable to ignore how magnificent it all is, how gracefully detached from the ugliness below. Though the moment lasts no more than a second, it feels longer, like I've been gifted some fleeting respite, a transient sliver of time in which to appreciate the calm and quiet cosmos. A moment to escape, however briefly, from the events that are to come. I don't know how much longer the moment might have lasted. I suppose I never will. It's with a sense of genuine sadness that I turn myself away, twisting my body around in midair. The stars disappear from view, and I am left staring down the slope into the valley's dark, uncompromising depths. My commune with the heavens has ended, and I'm returned to the cold, unforgiving earth. My body tensed and aching, I pick myself up off the valley floor. The second I stumble onto my feet, a harsh beam of torchlight strikes the ground to my right. My muscles groaning, I jump back against the natural rock wall as the light swings my way, sweeping directly over the spot where I just landed. I don't expect her to come after me. I certainly don't expect her to drop down the slope. Perhaps she could walk back down the road, taking a gentler route downhill, and pursue me through the valley once it levels out, but that walk would probably take half an hour each way. If I were her, I wouldn't want to leave the Wrangler unprotected for that long. Catching my breath, my back pressed against the rough rock wall, I run through my current priorities. I need to stabilize Rob, I need to lure Blue Jay away from the Wrangler, and, most pressingly, I need to contact Lilith. I reach to the back of my waistband, my hand searching for my personal walkie-talkie. My fingers touch denim, finding an empty space where the transceiver should be. My stomach drops as I search along my back. It's gone. I'd had it with me when I dropped onto the slope, but at some point during my furious descent, it must have gotten away from me. The torchlight swings back around once more. The torchlight disappears once more. I cautiously lean out from the shadows, scanning the forest around me. Blue Jay's walkie-talkie had been in her car when the child pushed it from the road. If I'm correct, then her transceiver is the only one left that I can use to contact Lilith. The car itself doesn't seem to be anywhere around me, but as I turn my head and scan the dark hillside, I can see it resting on the slope. The entire car has been stopped mid-fall, resting precariously on its side, the vehicle's crooked undercarriage crumpled around the trunk of an old and battered tree. I edge along the rock until Blue Jay's car is almost directly uphill from me. Turning around, and running my hands against the damp, shrouded wall, I'm able to discern a few passable handholds. Placing my fingers into a large groove above my head, I jam my boot onto a small outcrop just above the wall and push myself upwards. It isn't an easy climb. My hands are cold, my arms are tired, and I'm certainly not wearing the right shoes. My boots repeatedly slip from their holds, causing my arms to throb as they're forced to bear my weight. After painstakingly scraping up the first 2 meters, I run out of places to put my hands, my outstretched fingers falling roughly 10 inches short of the top. I take a quick breather, letting both arms straighten as I lean back and observe the wall above me. As the torch sweeps past overhead once more, it illuminates a small twisted root on the very edge of the cliff. I have no idea if I can reach it, and there's every chance it will give way immediately, causing me to topple helplessly back to the earth. However, I can already feel my grip weakening, a noticeable ache running up my forearms. I'm not going to be able to stay where I am much longer, and I suspect I won't have the energy to make it this far again. Edging my feet up, scrabbling the side of my boot against the wall until it sticks in place. I bend my legs slightly, poising myself to make the jump. Gritting my teeth, and with a sharp, tentative intake of breath, I swing myself up into the air and let go of the wall. I force myself over the edge and onto the soft soil, just in time for the torchlight to start circling back towards me. As much as I have to move quickly up to the car, I also need to move carefully. It's becoming increasingly clear that this will be my only attempt at reaching the radio. The vehicle is only a short climb away. I can see its undercarriage laying against the tree, the entire left side of the vehicle pressed into the ground. Only now I'm nearby do I hear the ominous creaking sound that emanates from the car, as it rocks almost imperceptibly around a thin focal point. I wait for the torchlight to swing past me once more before pulling myself out from the shadow of the tree. My dirt-covered hands grasping at any conceivable purchase, I crawl up the bank towards Blue Jay's vehicle. My feet slip on the grass with every other step as the rain seeps into the ground, soaking through my fleece. Blue Jay's transceiver is still fastened within its dock. Despite the car's battered condition, the windshield is frustratingly intact, with nothing more than a small jagged, irregular hole near its center. It will take a bit of maneuvering, but it should be just big enough to reach through and pull the radio free. Slowly, and tentatively, I thread my arm through the center of the opening, shards of serrated glass encircling my skin. My hand reaches the dashboard, slowly brushing along its surface towards the walkie-talkie as I lean into the car. My hand grasps the transceiver as the light reaches me. Though I'm ashamed to admit it, for a brief moment, drowned in the revealing glare of the torch's beam, I'm stunned into inaction. The light has stopped moving, fixed directly on me, casting my stark shadow down into the valley. I can imagine Blue Jay's triumphant glare as her desperate search is finally rewarded. Returning to my senses all too late, I grit my teeth, and wrench the walkie-talkie from its dock. With no time for grace or care, I retract my arm from the windshield, inhaling sharply as an aberrant shard of glass scrapes across the back of my hand. It turns out I have greater things to worry about, as I hear a loud bang from up the top of the hill, followed instantaneously by a disgusting zipping sound that flashes past my ear. I flinch instinctively from the noise, my sudden reaction causing my boots to give way beneath me. I slam into the earth and career down the hill. What little control I have over the slope, I give away in a desperate bid to roll into the car's shadow and out of the light. I don't have time to right myself as I'm dragged chaotically down towards the valley, and cast over the edge once more. The torch dances erratically around my position. I pick myself up and drag my body the last few meters, collapsing against the wall as torch beam lights up the ground in front of me. As I raise the radio, I realize my hands are violently shaking. I don't think I've ever been as close to death as when that bullet passed by me, and although the noise itself died quickly, its horrific implications echo in my skull. Blue Jay shot Rob as a bargaining chip, to drag us out of the Wrangler. It was a show of force. A power play. The bullet that she just fired in my direction had no nuance, no pretense, no objective other than its primary function. Blue Jay's prepared to kill me, which means she's prepared to kill any of us. I raise the transceiver, and switch through the channels until I find Rob's frequency. AS, this is Bristol to Lilith. Bristol to Lilith. Do you copy? The radio crackles as I release the button. I wait 20 interminable seconds for Lilith to respond. She doesn't. This time I let a minute pass. Still nothing. Everything I've been struggling for since I jumped into the valley has come up against a wall of silence. I feel a swell of frustration inside me. AS, Jen. Jen, are you there? Another minute goes by. I sit in silence the whole time, watching as the radio I risked my life to collect transforms into a useless hunk of plastic. After a while I loosen my grip and let it drop into the wet soil. As soon as it arrives the voice is gone. The wind quiets down and the rain begins to drop vertically once again. AS, hello. Hello. Who is that? The air is still, absent of everything but the rain. I wipe the tears from my face as I call out to the air. AS, can you help me? Please can you, just. The voice has disappeared, and I suspect I won't be hearing it again anytime soon. Perhaps it just wants me to know that it's watching. One thing is certain, if the voice is attempting to bring me comfort, or make me feel less alone, then its methods are horribly misguided. My eyes fixate on the crackling radio. Lilith, VO yeah I'm okay, I thought you were, what happened to you? As, well, it's a big forest. Maybe it's gone. Can you stay near the clearing? Lilith, V.O how? AS, I'm still working on that. I'm about half an hour away. Keep your volume down but stay in touch alright? Lilith, V.O yeah. Okay, will do. I'm glad you're alright Alice. I'm still stuck in the middle of a dark forest, I'm still muddied, bloodied, and injured, but I'm no longer alone. Something feels wrong. Creeping up to the Wrangler, I find the passenger side window broken, 1,000 splinters of glass spilled across the ground, trodden into the mud. The glove box has been left open, the boxes of ammunition either emptied or removed. The next thing I notice makes my blood run cold, and forces me to curse my own stupidity. The light on the CB radio is on. When I'd reached the bottom of the hill, I'd correctly calculated the number of active radios, arriving at the conclusion that only me and Lilith would be able to communicate. Technically I'd been right, we were the only two who could talk, but that didn't mean we were the only ones who could listen. I'd forgotten that the CB radio in Rob's car had its own independent battery, and inbuilt speakers. Most importantly, he'd been using it throughout the trip to broadcast and receive across all our frequencies. Blue Jay, V.O bring me my fucking key Alice. AS, Blue Jay, where's Lilith? Blue Jay, V.O she's here. Blue Jay, V.O ha what? No. No you're not going to trick me again, Alice. You don't get to confer. You get to bring me the key to my fucking car, and then you get to walk yourselves back home. Now what about that do you need to fucking discuss? She waits patiently for my answer. I suddenly feel like we've entered an entirely new realm. Blue Jay has the upper hand, and under the threat of fierce, unthinkable consequence we've become the subjects of her domain. Reason, diplomacy, and sanity no longer hold sway over proceedings. As long as she has Lilith remains at the end of that rifle, I'm beholden to her madness. Fine. Okay. I'm on my way. Blue Jay lets go of the button, returning me to a familiar silence. If I keep the keys from her, Lilith will be at her mercy, and although Blue Jay can't really afford to kill her bargaining chip, I have no doubt she'll be willing to hurt her as much as she needs in order to force my compliance. If I let her take the Wrangler, however, we're both dead anyway. My journey through the forest is uncomfortable, and rings with an unsettling finality. Like a guilty child heading towards an unavoidable reckoning, I'm overcome by a pervasive dread which builds with every shuffling step. I do my best to keep the Wrangler behind me, carving a straight line through the woods. All in all, it takes less than 5 minutes before the clearing opens up ahead of me. Blue Jay is planted in the very center of a large glade, leaving too much exposed ground in every direction for me to even contemplate an ambush. Rob's torch lies at her feet, as she keeps both her hands firmly wrapped around the rifle. Lilith kneels beside her, the barrel of the gun placed against her temple, her tear-stained face contorted by a mixture of despair and vitriolic anger. Her hands rest against her lap, her wrists bound by same brand of cable ties I'd used to restrain Bonnie. I can imagine Blue Jay bristled with poetic justice when she ordered Lilith to fasten the band around her wrists. They both see me as soon as I step out of the trees. Lilith, are you okay? Lilith, I'm okay. I'm okay. Blue Jay, hand me the fucking keys. Fine. I have them in my bag, let me. Blue Jay, you fucking bitch. Lilith is knocked onto her back, dazed and hurt. Without hesitation, Blue Jay swings the rifle down and fires a shot into the girl's stomach. Another shot echoes through the cold air, flying wide and perishing with a distant thud. As I reach the edge of the clearing, I throw myself behind the thick trunk of the nearest tree. My back presses against the rough bark, as I listen for any movement behind me. A shot grazes the tree, ricocheting off into the woods. I can hear her beginning to strafe around my position, poised and ready to fire as soon as she gets an angle. My hand slips into my pocket. You know what, Blue Jay? I believe you. The next thing I hear is a faint, nostalgic ring tone, a sudden, deafening bang. In the brief time I was afforded, following my tense call with Blue Jay, I had taken one of Rob's knives to the block of C4, cutting away almost everything around the blasting cap. The block was less than a pound in weight when I'd slipped it into a compartment of my satchel and buttoned it up. When Blue Jay had asked for the key, I'd made sure to reach into my bag enthusiastically. I had a feeling she'd see my eagerness as a potential trap, allowing me a chance to throw her the satchel. She didn't trust anything I did, and it had made her predictable. I step out from behind the tree and look towards Blue Jay, lying broken on the forest ground, a large section of her abdomen removed by the blast, her arm, shoulder, and upper thigh virtually non-existent. She struggles to breathe as blood fills her airway. When she manages to open her eyes once more, the look she gives me is kind, and heartbreakingly knowing. I can't help but think back to our time on the cliffside, overlooking the vast ocean of fields. She'd asked how many people had died being told comforting lies. She asked how many of them knew. I can't speak for anyone else, but as she stares up at me, hushing me with a look, I can tell that she does. I stand stock still as the child's crooked form staggers out from the tree line. It looks markedly different, now a patchwork malformation of adolescence, adulthood, and old age. The face, however, is still juvenile and filled with an innocent sorrow as it lurches towards Blue Jay on uneven feet. It doesn't seem to have noticed me. I back away from Blue Jay and step slowly towards Lilith, where Rob's LED torch still lays on ground. Frustrated tears dripping freely from its chin, the child throws Blue Jay's wrist back down against the ground. As it looks away from her broken body, and turns its face to me, I watch as the soft innocent features contract into a scowl of juvenile rage, signifying the inceptive throes of a tantrum that could eviscerate anything in its path. The torch swings wildly as the creature climbs on top of me, tearing the fabric from my right sleeve, digging its nails into the skin just above my elbow. It doesn't stop at the skin. I feel the hot, electric agony of scraped nerve endings, hear the sickening snap of breaking bone. Before I lose my chance forever, I throw the torch weakly from my right hand, and catch it in my left, pressing the beam directly into the child's face. I need to get back to the Wrangler. I can feel everything starting to fade, even the ringing in my ears is dulled, my vision blurry. I lock the stick under my armpit, freeing up my left hand to brace me as I start to stumble against the trees. The more I lose of my faculties, the less capable I am of perceiving their decline, but I know they're slipping away all too quickly. As I struggle further through the woods, a figure steps out from the trees, stopping me in my tracks. I sway on my feet, as I try to identify what I'm seeing, the very act of standing now requiring constant, dogged attention. I don't know if the entity is malignant or benign, but in my current state, my mind softly screaming against the dying light, I can't make the distinction. As it backs up against a mound of earth, I try to ask it for help. The requisite words have already been lost to the advancing fog, and all I can do is reach out my hand towards him, attempting to entreat some spark of humanity within the fizzling, shifting figure. There's something wrong with my eyes. The car shifts in and out of focus, but every time it comes back in view the image is less sharp, until it exists as a pulsing dark green blur against a dull, slowly swaying backdrop. My boots kick up against one another, a final stumble that brings me down to earth. When I try to get up again, I find that I'm completely unable. There's no strength left in my body, and no amount of resolve can raise me back to my feet. It was the day we met. The day he told me about his long and meandering life, Japan, Hiroji, Aokigahara, and the strange phenomenon he saw which sparked his obsession with the supernatural. The singular event that started him down the road to the left/right game, that led this excursion, the moment that brought us here.
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I get it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.